Once upon a time, there lived a farmer named Wale. Wale was a cheerful and hardworking man, well known for his generosity and his dedication to his family. He was married to Kemi, a woman whose beauty and kindness captured the hearts of everyone she met. Their marriage was built on love and respect, and together they dreamed of a bright future. Wale and Kemi were overjoyed when they were blessed with their first child, a baby girl they named Tosin. The moment Tosin was born, it was as though the sun had decided to shine brighter in their home. Her giggles filled the air, and her parents looked on her endlessly. Wale, who was usually busy tending to his farm, began spending more time at home just to hold little Tosin in his arms. Kemi would sing sweet lullabies to her, rocking her to sleep under the warm Nigerian sun. They were a picture of happiness. But their joy was short-lived. Just a few months after Tosin's birth, Kemi started falling ill. At first, it seemed like a minor weakness, but soon her condition worsened. Wale took her to the village doctor, who diagnosed her with after-birth complications. Despite the doctor's efforts, Kemi's health continued to worsen. One evening, as the stars glittered in the sky, Kemi called Wale to her bedside. Her voice was faint, but her words were clear. "Take care of our Tosin," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Promise me you will do everything to make her happy." Wale held her hand tightly, his own tears falling freely. "I promise," he whispered, his voice shaking. Not long after, Kemi took her last breath. Kemi's death left a gaping hole in Wale's heart. He struggled to cope with the loss. But every time he looked at Tosin, he was reminded of the promise he made to Kemi. He became both father and mother to her, waking up early to prepare her meals, taking her to school, and reading her bedtime stories at night. Tosin was a bright and curious child. By the age of 2, she could already recite her alphabet and count numbers. Her laughter brought Wale some comfort, but the burden of raising her alone began to weigh heavily on him. 2 years after Kemi's death, Wale's family began to urge him to remarry. Wale, his older brother, said one day, "You need a woman in the house. Tosin is growing up and she needs a mother figure." At first, Wale resisted. He couldn't imagine anyone replacing Kemi, but as time went on, he realized that he couldn't do it all alone. Reluctantly, he agreed to consider remarrying. The family introduced Wale to a woman named Miriam. She was from a nearby village and came highly recommended by his relatives. Miriam presented herself as kind and caring, someone who would help bring stability to Wale's home. When Wale married Miriam, he hoped she would bring love and support into their lives. At first, Miriam seemed to adore Tosin. She would braid her hair, sing her songs, and even accompany her to school. Wale began to believe he had made the right choice. But behind closed doors, Miriam was a different person. As Tosin grew, her beauty and intelligence began to shine even brighter. By the age of 5, she was not only well-spoken, but also well-mannered. Teachers at her school often praised her, and villagers would comment on how much she resembled her late mother. Miriam couldn't stand it. In her eyes, Tosin was a constant reminder of Kemi, the first wife who everyone still spoke highly of. Jealousy began to fester in her heart. One evening after Wale had gone to bed, Miriam cornered little Tosin in the kitchen. "Do you think you're better than everyone else because people like you?" she hissed. "I'll make sure you suffer in this house." Tosin, confused and scared, didn't know what to say. She ran to her room, tears streaming down her face. From that day on, Miriam's true nature revealed itself. She began withholding food from Tosin, sending her to school without lunch or money. When Wale wasn't around, she would make Tosin do heavy chores, saying, "When I was your age, I was already working on the farm." Despite the mistreatment, Tosin remained strong. She focused on her studies and excelled academically, earning the admiration of her teachers and peers. When Tosin turned 12, tragedy struck again. Wale, who had always been a pillar of strength, fell gravely ill. He could no longer work on the farm, and the family's income dwindled. Marian took this opportunity to get rid of Tosin. She sent her to live with a distant relative, claiming it was for her own good. In reality, Tosin was made to work as a house help, cleaning and cooking in exchange for a roof over her head. Tosin's life was tough, but she refused to give up. A kind aunt noticed her potential and encouraged her to continue her education, even helping her pay school fees. Years passed and Tosin grew into a beautiful and ambitious young woman. At 22, she was determined to finish her degree in accounting. But her plans were interrupted when her father's condition worsened. The family needed a large sum of money for Wale's surgery. One day, an old family friend, a wealthy old man, offered to help, but only on one condition. Tosin would have to marry his only son, George, who was bedridden and unable to speak or walk. Tosin was devastated. She didn't want to marry a man she didn't love, especially one who was so sick. But Marian, her stepmother, seized the opportunity. "Do you want your father to die?" she sneered. "You have no choice." After days of crying and sleepless nights, Tosin agreed to the marriage. She didn't want her father to die, and she didn't want to watch her father continue suffering. The wedding was grand, but Tosin felt like a prisoner. Her new husband, George, sat silently in a wheelchair throughout the ceremony. When Tosin moved into the mansion, she was filled with dread. George rarely interacted with her, as she spent her night crying, wondering if this was her fate forever. But over time, Tosin began to notice small things about George. Though he couldn't speak, his eyes were kind, and he often tried to smile at her. She started talking to him, sharing stories about her day. Slowly, a bond began to form. Tosin began caring for George with genuine affection. She fed him, read to him, and even sang to him at night. George, in turn, began showing signs of life, nodding appreciation and squeezing her hand. One night, Tosin had a vivid dream. A voice told her to gather specific herbs, boil some into tea, make a paste with the rest. The voice instructed her to apply the paste to George's joints and give him the tea for 1 week. Desperate to help her husband, Tosin followed the instructions. And on the 7th day, something extraordinary happened. George stood up from his wheelchair. He spoke his first words in years, thanking Tosin with tears in his eyes. The news spread like wildfire through the village. People came from far and wide to see the miracle couple. With George fully recovered, he and Tosin grew closer than ever. He supported her dream of finishing her degree, and she encouraged him to pursue his own ambitions. Wale recovered after his surgery and was overjoyed to see his daughter thriving. Meanwhile, Marian was left sitting in jealousy, watching as Tosin's life blossomed. Through her endurance and faith, Tosin overcame every obstacle. She and George built a life filled with love, proving that even in the darkest times, light can shine through. One morning, Marian confessed to Wale how cruel she had been to Tosin right from her childhood, and was willing to leave Wale. But Wale forgave her and told her not to go, but to stay. "At least my daughter is in a better place now. I forgive you." And so, Wale forgave her and took her back. After 1 year, Tosin and her husband welcomed their first child, and they lived happily. Moral lessons. No matter how tough life gets, resilience and kindness and determination can turn even the most hopeless situations around. What others mean for evil, God can turn into good. God bless you.